what's really great in Mel Gibson's in his performance is this evolution. It's like this arc that he's got and of course it's probably shot out of sequence as most films are, but there's an amazing kind of growing awareness of camaraderie and responsibility and I guess patriotism as well that grows, and by the end it's really, for me, it's Mel Gibson's character that is heartbreaking.
Hello and welcome to this month's Film Club. It's Gallipoli. Director Tim Hewitt joins me to talk about the 1981 Australian film directed by Peter Weir and starring Mel Gibson and Mark Lee. It's the anniversary of the Battle of the Neck, which took place in August 1915, and this movie depicts those events with a little artistic license which we'll discuss. Coming up in the Film Club, we've got a 1972 Munich Olympics double bill with Munich, directed by Steven Spielberg, and One Day in September, directed by Kevin MacDonald. We'll be doing The Bounty and Master and Commander, and then in November, 13 Days and JFK. So please do subscribe and share with friends. Plenty more history to come on the regular pod, but in the meantime I'm going to hand you over to me and Tim Hewitt discussing Gallipoli. Tim Hewitt, welcome back to this month's Film Club.
Thank you so much.
And so we are today. We're talking about a film that you've been very keen to have on the show, and I'm very glad you are, because this is the First World War, and the First World War. Actually, one of my most popular podcasts is my conversation with Gary Sheffield about the First World War and myths of the First World War.
Right. Okay.
Which I think, from a historical standpoint, the film Gallipoli may have made a few mythical sort of errors or faux pas. But anyway.
As long as we bear in mind that these are films and not documentaries.
Indeed, you're absolutely right about that. So Gallipoli, one wonderful film made in 1981, I think.
It was 1981.
It made in 1981, starring Mel Gibson in the title, well, not in the title role. He did not play Gallipoli.
as Gallipoli. Yeah.
Mel Gibson as the main role. Mark Lee, another Aussie actor. Well, actually, okay, Mel Gibson, he is American but brought up in Australia. Is that correct?
Yes. He moved, I think New York is where he started, born and grew up until he was 9, I think, and then they moved to Sydney. And then he went to school in Sydney and went to drama school in Sydney, and so sort of Australianized himself. But he's American. Yeah, he is American. So,
and he's also an Irish citizen as well.
Oh, is he? Oh, I didn't know that. Okay,
so, fellow countryman of mine. Then,
yeah, absolutely.
So Mel Gibson, as a result of that, he made his name in Australia in this film, in the great Mad Max 2, also
and his
great
sequels. Yes, great character. I mean, there's a lot of stick, of course, and
well, we'll talk about his early 80s. Let's not dwell too much in the sort of
no, not at all. But it was for me to reiterate that essentially that I always thought he was a really good actor. His early roles, in particular, were character driven films, very just a character actor really that landed leads. But I think he was really, really good, particularly in his Australian accent. This is obviously one of them. Phenomenal performance in one of my favorite, absolutely probably my favorite Australian film, along with Mad Max, I would say, but one of my favorite films in general. And I think he's remarkable in it.
He is. We'll go into him in this film in a little bit more detail. Just want to cover some of the basics. So it's directed by Peter Weir from a screenplay by David Williamson, who also wrote The Year of Living Dangerously, which is another Peter Weir film made the next year, also starring Mel Gibson, which is all about Indonesia and the coup in Indonesia.
Yeah, it's a very, very good film, that one. Quite unseen, not unseen, but it's not as known.
It isn't.
That one was Sigourney
Weaver.
Really good film. Yeah, really good film, actually. A good performance by Mel Gibson again.
And this is part of I think this film was one of the early Australian new wave.
It was, the late 70s saw a sudden Australian film boom. Films like Mad Max, actually, kind of low budget B movies that essentially became global hits. And it's put all these Australian filmmakers on the map, and this is one of the early ones that I think did internationally really, really well. Put Mel Gibson in the forefront. I mean, Mad Max obviously did as well in the sequel, and then things like The Bounty. Group of filmmakers in Australia in this period became prolific, and I think well deserved, because I think they did such great work.
Well, it also, I mentioned Mark Lee. I mean, he's kind of sank without a trace after this, didn't he?
Yeah, it's a shame, because he had a good screen presence, good looking, very typical Australian looking guy. I think, he sort of just did a lot of television. I think he may still be acting, but just sort of not the highest profile work that you'll see globally, but it's I think he still is an actor.
Well, he's great as this sort of naive young sprinter who's very idealistic about the First World War as well.
Great contrast with Mel Gibson's character, who really couldn't give a...
Yeah, he's a bit more cynical, isn't he? Yes.
Yeah.
And then it's got the great Bill Kerr, who actually I think was in the Second World War.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he served in the Second World War. But Bill Kerr, very good. And then I think probably my favourite sort of Aussie actor, who's in so many great films, Muriel's Wedding, Bill Hunter, and he plays the commanding officer of the battalion based in Gallipoli. He's a fantastic actor, Bill Hunter.
Yeah, really, really perfectly cast in this one.
And so Gallipoli was, I mean, I remember the cover of Gallipoli, which was this sort of artist painting of the final moment film, but it's quite a sort of almost abstract image.
Yeah, it's actually, I think it's the poster on IMDb.
Right. I'll put links in this for all the listeners, of course. So the film starts, it's really all about the running, and we never really, the Mark Lee character is quicker than Mel Gibson, isn't he?
Yes, he is, which serves up quite an interesting dilemma at the end. Are we allowed to spoil? I'm not sure, because I think it's been out.
I think the film's been out a while.
You think? Yeah.
I think listeners. Okay, any listener who has not seen Gallipoli, it's set in the First World War. So, as with many films set in the First World War, there is a tragic ending.
Let's actually emphasize. To be honest, most of the film actually isn't set during the first. I mean, isn't actually on location in the First World War. Most of the film is in Australia, a bit of Africa.
Yeah,
but
Egypt,
it starts, Egypt, and it starts, of course, Egypt, because it starts in pretty much the outback. You get to know these two characters, one of which is very keen to go and join up.
Yeah, so that's Mark Lee who plays Archie Hamilton, which is Archie's just such a name from that era. You don't get many Archies nowadays.
Everything about the film is very Australian, even the names, even the blonde, a lot of the characters who just look very Australian and behave in an extraordinarily Australian manner.
Well, you mentioned the outback. I mean, I think it's Western Australia it's meant to be. So that really
Western Australia. Sorry, yes, I consider
Sydney.
Great scene in it where they're walking across the desert. Brilliant. Cinematography, brilliant.
But before we get to, before they do that, it really is an introduction into the life in. Well, I guess it's Western Australia. So I don't want to sort of blandly say all is the outback. And I think of all the states in Australia, Western Australia, I think the capital of which is Perth, still has that kind of Victorian feel to it. I guess this is sort of really the Edwardian period, but it has got the Victorian colonial architecture, hasn't it?
I guess. I mean, that's juxtaposed with the very current modern Australia, bear in mind, is technically, I suppose, newer than the States. Very much that remnant, but as well as, a modernization that's I would say probably on a par with the United States. I think that feel in the film you'll find very much today. Obviously, the landscape hasn't changed at all. It captures the barren nature of Western Australia when they're, especially Mel Gibson's lot. Mel Gibson is part of like a little troop, about 4 of them, I think, who just do like labor. workers, and Gibson wants to get out of. I think he wants to head to Perth at the beginning, is the thing. And he's a runner, and he races, and he races up against Archie Hamilton, who's Mark Lee's character. That's how they meet. It's just such a great journey of a film. It's like an adventure film almost, but with this bleak, overhanging fate that kind of you feel it. You don't think anything good's going to happen. It's just such a great drama.
Yeah. So the two title characters, they meet early on, don't they, in a race? Archie defeats the character played of Mel Gibson,
Frank.
Frank, yes. And Frank's obviously upset about it. And Frank, you can tell Frank's a bit of a rogue because he slips a few Aussie dollars to the stewards to bet that he will win the race. And then the two don't meet again. But meanwhile, Archie does this fantastic race against his sort of enemy, who's on horseback.
Yes. It's like a cross-country race. It's not like a
cross-country race.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And he does it barefoot.
Yeah, he's barefoot, but then his enemy has to ride bareback.
Yes.
And
it's a great shot where the horse appears at the finish line with no rider on top.
But that really shows Archie's determination. He's a very stubborn individual.
Yes, very, and it kind of sets the scene for his bravery that comes later, which of course Frank Dunn, Gibson's character, you could argue doesn't. He's a bit of a coward. He doesn't want to sign. There's a really great scene where both of them turn up at a farm, and beautiful daughters live on the farm, beautiful women, and they welcome them in because they've been walking across the open plains, and then they all have a little drink in the evening, and then Mark Lee's character says, I'm going to join the light horse. I'm going to go and join up because that's what you do. And then they sort of turn to Mel Gibson, and he's like, no, I've got business interests. And they raise a glass to Mark Lee's character, and it really encapsulates that Frank's a bit of a coward.
And Frank notices that the two young ladies, immediately their hearts aflutter because Archie's joining the army.
Yeah, and he's going to be in uniform.
You've mentioned them crossing the desert, and that the thing about this film is there are a few characters, I think two characters who they don't have big parts, so I don't want to overstate it, but you do get a lot of Aboriginal presence. Archie's big mate in the early part of the film is an Aboriginal character, which I guess that was right in the heart of Australia's going through a lot of, I guess, agonizing now over their treatment of Aboriginals during the period that this film is based. Peter Weir's used Aboriginal actors in this, but the crossing of the desert is interesting because they meet. They're crossing this desert and they meet, and it's somewhere in Western Australia. So please forgive me, I can't name it. But
they're heading for Perth, basically.
Yes.
They? Yeah.
And they come across a chap, an old grizzled old bloke with a donkey and
it's a camel, actually. I think
it's a camel. Yes. They're amazed to see this camel.
See, it's camel, yeah.
And he has water for them, so this basically saves their lives. They tell him why they're going over there. They're going to Perth to join the army, and he doesn't know anything about a war going on because it's 1915, I guess. And
it's been going for about a year. Basically.
He says, "Why are you going to fight the war over in
Europe?"
The Archie character says, well, we've got to go there. They might be over here. And he looks across the desert, the old bloke, and they're welcome to it.
Yeah, in the most hardened Australian accent. And they're welcome to it.
Which Mel Gibson delights in.
Where you headed?
Perth.
I nearly went there once. Thought I ought to see one big city before I die. You looking for work?
No, I'm after the war.
What war?
The war against Germany.
I knew a German once. How did it start?
Don't start him.
Don't know exactly, but it was the Germans' fault.
The Australians fighting already.
In Turkey.
Turkey? Why's that?
Ask him.
Because Turkey's a German ally.
Well, you learn something every day. Still, can't see what it's got to do with us.
If we don't stop them there, they can end up here.
And welcome to it.
But the when they eventually join, Gibson's what's really great in Mel Gibson's in his performance is this evolution. It's like this arc that he's got and of course it's probably shot out of sequence as most films are, but there's an amazing kind of growing awareness of camaraderie and responsibility and I guess patriotism as well that grows and by the end it's really, for me, it's Mel Gibson's character that is heartbreaking. I won't give anything away, but I mean, it's not a happy third act. One of the greatest film screams in cinema history right at the end. This pain that comes out when he does, maybe rivaled only, not quite as good, but rivaled by perhaps Sean Penn screaming in Clint Eastwood film called Mystic River when he discovers his daughter is dead. It's so emotional. And then you look back over the performance of Mel Gibson in the film and you see this, such a difference from the beginning. And it's brilliantly paired with Mark Lee because they become very close friends, a real kind of love and caring for each other, which he sort of doesn't have with his other mates, who are kind of his older mates, who are a bit more kind of buffoon type characters. But then they also become very emotional towards the end as well. I mean, there's nothing not moving about the Gallipoli sequence in the last third.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Mel Gibson. I guess recently that's become a loaded sentence, hasn't it? And it kind of betrays all sorts of...
Yeah, yes, of course. I mean, he to be honest, in the last kind of 10 years, he hasn't done the most amazing, hasn't chosen the most amazing character to play. That's probably not necessarily his fault. It is his fault, but
he was arrested in, I think, 2010.
It's a while ago now, to be honest, actually.
He was drunk, I think, drunk driving, and I just checked with the Aspects of History lawyers. I'm pretty sure this happened. And he then came out with a whole load of anti-Semitic conspiracy theories.
And slurs.
Yes. And then I think there's something to do with I think there was something to do with his wife and daughter as well. He's obviously and I think he's been put down to alcoholism or whatever, but maybe you can, but my view on these sorts of things is you can still enjoy his acting without wanting to go for a cup of tea with him.
I agree. I mean, you say this, you can say the same thing about, I rewatched LA Confidential recently, which is one of the great crime films ever made. And I still think Kevin Spacey's brilliant performance. He's great in a lot of things. I don't watch these actors and go, sorry, I can't watch this film now because of what's happened in real life. So Gibson did, fantastic work in The Bounty, Anthony Hopkins, which could appear on this podcast one day, maybe. And then, of course, he was perfectly in his first Hollywood role, which really brought him into the eye of everyone around the world. Perfectly cast in Lethal Weapon. He was perfect as Martin Riggs because of his slightly crazed look in his eye, the fact that he is a bit wired. And then, then the sequels descended into a bit of parody, which, the first one was quite serious, was a real acting chops role. So I think he's
two's good.
Diplomatic
immunity.
Two's that was South African, folks. Just yes, it was fun as opposed to Lethal Weapon, the original. There was danger in his character. You didn't know really he wasn't predictable. He was and it wasn't an out and out comedy. Tequila Sunrise, the guilty pleasure of mine. You probably remember this from school. I used to watch it all the time.
It's great. I think I've definitely watched it with you then. JT Walsh, love JT Walsh.
Yeah,
and Raul Julia.
And Raul Julia and Michelle, obviously.
Both of those sadly, Michelle Pfeiffer, Raul Julia and JT Wolf both sadly died of heart attack.
Died, yeah. Absolutely, very sad indeed. So yeah, he had. It's a shame that he'd post, all the stuff that happened in his private life, that he didn't continue with interesting character roles. I would argue that there's one role that he did. The film isn't brilliant, but directed by Jodie Foster. It's a film called The Beaver. And it's a very interesting performance, very sad. And I think there is an emotional turmoil that goes on in it's probably in real life, and that can manifest itself quite in a good way on screen. But back to Gallipoli, it's I think one of his best films. I think it's one of Peter Weir's best films, if not his best film. A remarkable director. I don't think he's made a bad film ever.
I've met Peter Weir.
You have? I'm very jealous.
I was only small though. I was only small.
Oh, really?
I was more interested in meeting the star of the film.
I know exactly what you're talking about. Yes.
Harrison
Mosquito
Ford.
Coast, yeah. Harrison Ford. Very good. Good, really great. He gets great performances out of these movie stars, in inverted commas. For listeners who don't know, Peter Weir directed Picnic at Hanging Rock, which is an amazing Australian film. Gallipoli, The Year of Living Dangerously. He did Mosquito Coast. He did Witness with Harrison Ford, which is a great, I think his first American film. He did The Truman Show, which is fantastic. He did Master and Commander. I know you're keen to do on this podcast.
Yes.
Which of course we can. And The Way Back, I think was his latest film. We
could do, listeners can give their feedback, aspects of history.com. We could do a nautical double bill.
That's interesting.
We could do The Bounty and Master and
Commander. That's a great idea. Yeah. Double on the same podcast.
Indeed.
If people can be bothered to listen to us.
Yeah. Or I could split it into two and do it over the same month, though. Like we did with the 2008 Crash double bill.
Ah, yeah. Good idea. Okay, let's do that then.
And Mel Gibson's directorial achievements are impressive. And I know, Quentin Tarantino, who we are both huge admirers of, is blown away by his Maya film.
Yeah, Apocalypto,
yes.
Yeah, he said it was one of the best films, if not the best film that year. I mean, Gibson knows how to direct films, let's be honest. His action directing is phenomenal. I mean, Apocalypto is like an adrenaline rush. It's like one long chase film, really. I mean, Braveheart is, it's a redefined the epic. Because before Braveheart, there hadn't been that sort of a film for a very long, probably since like the 50s or 60s even. Like the big country, those big grand scale films. I'd argue without Braveheart, you wouldn't have had Gladiator, because it wasn't in the psyche of producers. But Braveheart was such a success that
won Best Film, didn't it? And
Best Film, Best Director.
I mean, it's historically illiterate,
rubbish, but you forgive it because it's got that speech about freedom. Who cares? And his accent, fine, doesn't matter. But it was a proper spectacle. Back to Gallipoli, it's a highly emotional film without being sentimental. Without being schmaltzy.
Yeah, and we'll get on to some of our categories then, I think. But taking into account some of the issues I have with it, historically speaking, I, without fail, end up in floods of tears in this film.
Yes. We mentioned the scream at the end that Gibson, but it's also the way it's cut.
Yeah, for me, it's the Archie character when he's reading out his the words he's been taught by his
Steel Springs.
Your Steel Springs, exactly.
Then let's see you do it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, that, and I mean, it's just heartbreak because it's the close up of the whistle going into the major's mouth, them just getting ready, and then Gibson sprinting as fast as he can, shouting, make way, and he ducks from bullets, and then it's the cut between literally just getting ready to go over, and then silent Mel Gibson running, cut Archie Hamilton, and then you hear the whistle, and then there's that scream, and then they all anyway.
Now on the way, on the race he has to run to basically save his comrades. On the way to the commanding officer, does he go the shortcut? Because on the return he runs through a sort of sniper alley, a particularly exposed piece of ground.
It's a slightly high ground where they shoot, and he ducks down and he yells, "Jesus Christ!"
Yeah. And they said, "Don't go that way, mate." And
I think,
is that on the way there? On the way back?
I think it's on the way back, isn't it?
Because so had he gone that way on the way there,
or he may have been shot, but he may have. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So let's do and the other thing, actually, Aussie and Kiwi listeners will be screaming at their mobile phones, because we haven't mentioned that Gallipoli is a hugely significant moment it's similar to Vimy for the Canadians in northern France, which I've been to, actually. The sacrifice, because by Britain declaring war against Germany and, I guess by definition eventually the Ottoman Empire in 1914, that effectively meant Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, as well as India, were also declaring war. Their foreign policy was controlled by the British at the time. And it was a different era, whereby Britain was the sort of mother country, of the empire, and Canada, Australia, New Zealand in particular, South Africa, of course, and India, did have that. Particularly the Anzac countries had that connection to Britain. Those bonds have probably been loosened a lot more today. But Gallipoli, most significantly, is this moment of maybe birth of the nation is not too strong a way of putting it.
I would say that's true. 25th of April, I think it is, isn't it? Anzac Day in Australia.
Well, you're an Australian citizen, so you would know better than me.
And it's highly significant for me. My dad was Australian, so I eat Vegemite, I don't eat Marmite. This is definitive Australian stuff. So I think so. I think it's it just reminds me of that scene in Gallipoli where they're in Egypt, they're training, and they hire the donkeys, and they start singing, "If England needs a hand, well, here it is." And that kind of, and the way the British soldiers are portrayed, they're like, riff raff. It's like, it's such an Aussie point of view, those scenes,
which I think is harmless when you've got upper class twits riding through.
Absolutely.
Riding through.
I would be on the Aussies. I am England. But I'd be like, I'd join that lot and take the mickey out of it.
But I think it becomes more problematic when we get to Gallipoli, because one probably annoying fact is that more British troops were killed at Gallipoli than Australian. And the actual, and we'll get onto this, I guess, with most unlikely scene so we'll get onto that, because I don't want to dwell too much on it now, because we are judging the film. And let's talk about best performance.
Well, for me, I don't think I could go with anyone other than Gibson, because I think it's a really rounded performance. He is in pretty much all of the film. Mark Lee, technically it's Mark Lee's point of view, I suppose. Mark Lee's really good. You can't really find fault with Mark Lee's performance. I think he does the innocence brilliantly. It's tragic, but the emotion that comes out of Gibson as he becomes aware of his responsibilities, kind of halfway through when they get to Gallipoli, a little look between, when there's an example when the major goes, "I need a runner," and he asks Mark Lee to do it because he's the fastest, and Mark Lee refuses. He's like, "I want to go over the top. I want to go over the top and fight." And then he turns to Gibson, and it's like Gibson's got basically portrayed, "I've got out of this. I've got out of this suicide mission," because he's like, "I'm going to die." That's basically what they all probably knew. And so for me, I think Gibson's my best performance. If I could, I'd give also best performance to all of those supporting characters in Gibson's little clique, because they're brilliant as well.
I find your argument for Gibson's very convincing. My nomination would have been Bill Hunter, who plays their CO, who plays it with such sensitivity. Absolutely. And when he says goodbye to his wife at the ship is so moving. And I agree. I just don't think he's in it enough. Yeah. No, I think it would have been better if he'd been in it more, but he couldn't have been, because obviously he's. Also, the scene where he's in his trench listening to classical music and drinking the champagne. His wife. Absolutely. Very powerful. And he doesn't want to kill. He knows. Well, he certainly knows this is sort of Operation Certain Death.
And in fact, no dialogue, but even the way he raises the whistle to his mouth, I think his hand's shaking. It's like, I mean, it's one of the best war films, if you can call it a war film, because I mean, technically you could call it a war film, but it's it's a drama, I guess.
It's definitely a war film,
but it's up there with the best that ever been made. And I think you'd have a heart of stone if it didn't get to you post credits. But can't we have Gibson? But
no, we can go with Gibson, because I think you've given a very powerful argument for it. So the Simon Baker Award for best performance, we haven't renamed it after Cillian Murphy. I just think Simon Baker deserves a little bit of a shout out. I think Cillian Murphy doesn't need this, whereas Simon Baker's career needs aspects of history's
I agree. Well, I mentioned Cillian Murphy there because Cillian Murphy in our Oppenheimer podcast got the Simon Baker Award.
He did. He got the Simon Baker Award. Yeah. So Mel Gibson is also a winner of the Simon Baker Award.
Right. Sure.
Yeah. So I mentioned Cillian Murphy just because he was probably, of all the film clubs we've done, apart from Simon Baker, is hugely powerful. Yes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And it's nice this as well, because I'm sure Gibson would be very honoured because Simon Baker is Australian.
Indeed. So, do you think Mark Lee and Mel Gibson are friends today?
I believe so. I do know that Gibson went to drama school with his mates, the guys who were his mates in the film.
Really?
He was at drama school with, drama school in Sydney, National Australian Academy of Dramatic Art, I think it's called. Kate Blanchett went there as well, and I think Gibson.
Did Simon Baker go there?
Oh, that's a good question. We'll have to look that up. His mates are like such Australian archetypes. When they go to the alleyways to buy, well, actually they go visit prostitutes in Egypt, and the blonde friend who's like, I'm disgusted. What should your mothers think? It's brilliant. And I think one of my favorite lines in the whole film is when his mate buys an artifact from one place and then he sees it cheaper in another place, and they go back and the guy's like, you didn't buy this here, and they actually make a mistake in the shop. But the guy's refusing, and the blonde guy just goes, "Nah, I'm going to get really bloody angry here." It's like, you can't get more Australian. They're so good, all of them, in those little roles. That could, I mean, in terms of unlikely scene, we've done actors. In terms of unlikely scene, is it a bit over the top that Gibson starts to vandalize the shop?
I don't think so. I think in those days, soldiers, when they
weren't very nice people.
Well, I think they just went around causing trouble. Yeah, that's why you have to have military police, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true.
Mel definitely gets that. So you've seamlessly slipped into my most unlikely scene. I think for me, it's the chain of command, the implication that the superior officer, because I think it goes from Bill Hunter, who's the commander of the battalion, it then goes to his CO, who's an Aussie commander,
and then
a supposedly British superior officer,
who I'm sure was played by Prince Charles at the time.
It does look very much like him.
Exactly like him.
But actually, I think he is Australian. He just, I think, is portraying that rather sort of upper class Australian accent that would be difficult to detect was Australian. It sounds more British.
Push on. The way he says push on.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, it could have been Australian, actually. That's a good point. I don't know.
Well, it's the Battle of the Neck. And so he was Australian. If that's, if they are, it took place in, I mean, we're speaking in August, because this is when it was the 7th of August, 1915, the Battle of the Neck. And that's what the film is portraying. But that's all fine and dandy if he's British, Australian. But the key thing is that they're implying that the British required a sacrifice of Australian troops so that the Brits could drink tea on the beach. And I think that might be Peter Weir going a little bit far there.
Right, okay.
I don't think there's any evidence that British soldiers demanded the sacrifice of Australian troops so they could drink tea.
No, I mean, you'd have to, listeners may know.
I do think, but what he's trying to say is that Australia was sacrificed for a British cause. World War One being the cause itself. And, obviously, that can be discussed forever.
Then, so that's your unlikely scene is the chain of command.
Yeah, the bit where the sort of, the sort of Prince Charles lookalike telling them to push on. Yeah, that's where I just question whether that's true, even though it makes such powerful
great
cinema.
drama. Yeah, I don't know what other, because pre the campaign scenes, or whether when they're either in Australia or when they're in Egypt training, when he signs up, he's too young, and Gibson helps him like with the beard. And then there's the incident where Gibson gets on the horse and he has no idea how to make the horse move, and Archie's going, kick it. I'm sure you'd know that you have to kick a horse.
Well, they can be stubborn things, though.
But you pick it.
I've been on a horse. I went on a riding holiday when I was 14. My parents, we were living in the Americas. They took us. I had this horse. I think it was called Nolan. And I gave it a big kick and didn't move an inch.
No, really?
No.
Well, you were 14, so you're probably quite weak.
Indeed. But I don't think that's as unconvincing as
to the chain of command. Okay.
British troops drinking tea whilst Aussies.
I do agree with that. That I agree. Let's go with that then.
Right. And then best scene. My favourite scene in the film is when they arrive at night and you have Adagio by Albinini playing at Gallipoli at night from Egypt, and you've got the sort of flares going off, and I find that hugely powerful. And then of course there's the final scene as well.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably go with. I mean, the thing is favorite and moving. There's the final scene is astonishingly moving, but then again, my favorite scene is also when they go into the shop when they're training. And I'm going to get really bloody angry. That's such a good scene. But in terms of importance, I don't know. You go.
I think we have both. It sounds like we both settled on the final scene, really.
But yeah, well, they both came up with. But so yes, I suppose that wins. I mean, it's almost like the film builds to that. It's like the point of the film is.
It is,
and the final frame is extraordordinary. So
it gets everything right, when he's running and his breath, the breath of him,
and he gets
breathing.
quite far. He gets quite far. I don't want to no spoilers, but he gets. I mean, he's a runner. So so listeners who haven't seen the film, I'd be very surprised if your listeners haven't seen Gallipoli. But of course, there may be. So you really must watch it. It's a great piece of work.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So that was the Argo Award for most unlikely scene went to the chain of command. The best scene, I can't remember if we've given that a sponsorship name.
Oh, that's a good point.
Maybe we haven't had a powerful enough scene yet. I think that if we're going to talk about legacy here, legacy is significant. I think it's one of the most popular Australian films ever made. I'm struggling to think of it's probably of Australian New Wave. This is the most popular.
Oh, I don't know. I would say probably. I mean, Mad Max is probably up there.
Of course.
And things like there's a really good film called Next of Kin,
right?
Which is an Australian film by a director called Tony Williams. That's like creepy as hell. It's sort of all in the same period. I think Peter Weir was a major forerunner. He was
made so many great films.
Yeah, I mean, Picnic at Hanging Rock is so haunting and brilliant. But I think Gallipoli is by far the most moving.
It's probably Gallipoli and Mad Max, then.
Yeah, I guess so. And Mad Max. The first one was very innovative because it was done on such a low budget. I mean, so low, made by a doctor. George Miller he's one of my favorite directors living. Along comes Mad Max 2 because he had a hell of a lot more money. And that in itself is an amazing achievement because it's just such a brilliant action film. Mad Max 3, not so brilliant, unfortunately.
But it's got Tina Turner in.
Yeah, but it's just not very good, I think. Anyway, and then of course you've got
Babe. Don't forget Babe. He made
Babe. He produced the first Babe, directed the second Babe, which isn't brilliant, I don't think. But one film that George Miller did do that was his first Hollywood film was The Witches of Eastwick. Amazing film. And then of course Mad Max Fury Road is quite possibly one of the greatest action chase films ever made.
I haven't seen that.
That surprises me. That actually shocks me.
Well, I've been a bit suspicious of it.
Well, the only thing about it, if anyone has seen it, and likes the original Mad Maxes, is it's just to me, it was sacrilege that Mel Gibson wasn't Mad Max in it. It was like, he's Max. What are you putting Tom Hardy in for? And also, I think it would have been so much better with Gibson at the age he was, seeing Max as an older person and seeing all that history and weight on his shoulders and what that would have made him. Whereas you got Tom Hardy just kind of, I don't know. Right, but the film is amazing. You must see it; it's brilliant.
Well, Gibson's still doing it. I mean, I saw a really good film of his the other day called Dragged Across Concrete.
Absolutely brilliant film with
really nasty film.
Yeah, but it's the director. He's a brilliant American director who made a film called Bone Tomahawk, which is a Western with Kurt Russell, and Prisoner in Cell Block. No, Brawl in Cell Block, something or other, which is a brilliant film as well. But Dragged Across Concrete is excellent.
Right, we've been going off a slight tangent. So I think where we'll just pull us back, and I think Legacy was saying this is a significant Legacy rating. So I'd say a strong 4 out of 5 on there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, am I right in thinking it's the only film really about that campaign?
Yes, cinematically, yes, I think you're right. There have been a few TV films. There was one, but yeah, cinema-wise, I think it's set such a high benchmark, and I actually think it's had a huge impact, not only culturally but historically for Australians. Had that film not been made, would, for example, the Australian cricket team, I think in 2001 or 2005, went via Gallipoli on their way over for the Ashes.
Oh, did they? All right.
Maybe they wouldn't have done that without the film. I don't know. I mean, obviously Gallipoli, they made the film because Gallipoli had such an impact on the Aussie.
That I wonder if the attitude towards whether Gallipoli fueled a sort of the Australian attitude to the British. Because I remember watching when in the same period, a television series came out called Bodyline.
Oh, it's brilliant.
With Hugo Weaving
playing Douglas Jardine, the great England captain. Hugo Weaving playing an Englishman.
Yes,
although I think
exactly.
Hugo Weaving is technically English.
Was he?
I think so.
I just remember the great, just the epitome of the English-Australian rivalry attitude to each other, where he knocks on the door of the Australian cricket team and says, "I do not take kindly to being called a bastard." And the Australian guy looks around and goes, "Which one of you bastards call this bastard a bastard?"
That's fantastic. I went to an Aussie friend of mine's fancy dress party dressed Douglas Jardine.
Oh, you did? Well, that TV series was made around the same time as Gallipoli. So I think there was very much this, I don't know what was the 80s, but it was, or the early 80s.
Oh, it's excellent. Bodyline. I mean, of course, I think you're right to mention Bodyline, the event, the series itself, because that added fuel to the fire of antipathy between Australia
completely
and Britain.
Yeah. And I think particularly you're talking about if he was British at the end, I don't know, but this whole the Brits having tea in Gallipoli, as I said before, is very much an Australian POV. So, I mean, and rightly so. I mean, Peter Weir's Australian. There's an Australian film, that kind of seep through when the training and them ridiculing the tough British officers, I think was significant. So good on ya. Yeah,
so a very powerful Legacy. 4.5 out of 5, maybe. Great stuff. Tim, this has been fantastic.
Been such fun.
And so
watch Gallipoli, everyone.
Well, September, October, November. So we're going to do. We haven't decided on September and October yet, I don't think, have we?
Well, the suggestion that we do Master and Commander and The Bounty as a double bill.
Yeah, that's tempting.
Because that's a naval double bill. And we've got, so JFK is November.
Yeah, and we're going to do 13 Days as well as a double bill for that, weren't we?
Yes, I mean, so it's a double Kevin Costner / double JFK.
JFK, yes. So then we just need to fill something in for October. Maybe we do Munich for October.
Yeah, I think personally, I don't know how many of your viewers have seen Munich. I think it's one of Spielberg's most underrated films.
Well, it'll go well with my documentary favorite, One Day in September.
Yes, that would go. I haven't seen that, but I must.
Yeah, you must. Right, Tim, been fantastic. Thanks,
right,
as ever.
Thanks so much to you. Thanks, everyone, for listening.
Thanks, listeners.
As you heard, there are plenty more great historical films to be covered. And if you've got any ideas, do let me know.
you can email me history@aspectsofhistory.com. One thing I regret that we didn't mention, the wonderful score in Gallipoli by Maurice Jarre, but you can't have everything. So do join me with plenty more great history coming up. Until then, thank you and good night.